just asked me, "Are you sure you're okay being able to read?"
Yeah, I know. Hello, everybody, and you're welcome once again to How to Stay Sane in a Pandemic webcast. I can just see a few of you shuffling in. I always think at this stage I have a vision of a church hall with people kind of shuffling in and taking their seats. So come on in. We're live. We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube, and we are on Facebook right now. So if you're here, yeah, I can see you. Come on in, sit down, grab a chair. I hope you've brought your coffee or your tea or your gin or whatever it is you fancy. You're all very welcome. And can I also welcome everybody who's going to watch this back later? Thank you for joining us too. You could all do me a favor. If you are enjoying this series of webcasts, I'd love you to share it. You could share the links on wherever you're watching it, on Twitter, on Facebook, or on YouTube. And also, this episode will join all the other episodes tomorrow on my website, and that is at barbarascully.com. So again, if you wanted to share that, share the word, I would be very grateful. Okay, the first thing I want to get out of the way before we do anything is to say that this week, the last 7 days have been a bruising 7 days. And I know many of us are finding this lockdown in particular very, very hard. The way out of this shit show is still mired in confusion and obfuscation. But hang on in there. This will be over. And for the next 30 minutes, we are here to kind of raise your spirits and distract you from all that's going on outside. And I have the perfect guy right here to help us do that. No pressure, Steve. No pressure whatsoever.
No
So
pressure
joining
at
me.
all.
No pressure at all. Joining me today is comedian and decent skin, Steve Cummins. Steve, in normal times, do you remember normal times? In normal times, he's the
Good old
resident
days.
host at the Laughter Lounge, but he is currently the host on Zoom Party, which he's going to tell us about in a little while. He's also a regular panelist on News Talk, which is how I know him. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time out. How are you?
You know I was chuffed to be asked. Genuinely love the idea behind this. The whole concept, how to stay sane, talk about positive things, things that are helping other people get through it. That's a great idea. Love it. So I was really
Good.
chuffed to be asked.
Well, you're very good, and I appreciate everybody who takes the time out to do this because it is a bit of a commitment. First of all, important stuff first. What are you drinking, love? Good man, you have a
I
beer.
am drinking a double IPA, right, which
A
is
double IPA.
8.5%. It's McGargles. Are we allowed to advertise other people's beers?
Yes, fire ahead. If they want to
McGargles.
sponsor us, just let me know.
It's really strong, right? Because it's
Right.
8.5%, but it's very flavorful. Like it's really, really nice. Because I don't know, I'm a bit of a, can I say the words? Can I say the W word?
Yeah, say what you want.
I can be a bit of a beer wanker. Not
Right.
like, I kind of know my beers. I know whiskey. I know them both kind of well, right? And the thing is, to make a beer strong like that, you have to, there's a load of sugar, obviously, conversion to alcohol. So it can be horribly sweet. Whereas
Okay.
this isn't horribly sweet. So I had a treble IPA. There's a brewery called Larkin's in Bray. And it's a guy called Killian Larkin came up with it. And bless him, his wife, his then girl fiance, she
Yeah.
contacted me to say, would I help her? She wanted to give a speech at her wedding. And I was so chuffed at the idea of a woman giving a speech to her wedding. I said I would be delighted to help.
I'm ancient. I gave a speech at my wedding, and so
Well,
did my mother.
well, that's amazing, by the way, because
Yeah,
so many people don't. And I always
I
sit there kind of
know.
going, why not? Right. So I said, I met with her, and actually, she'd written her own speech. I didn't do a thing. I only helped her with delivery. But I wouldn't take any money for it because I thought it was really, such a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
So she rewarded me with this giant bag of beer
Oh, that's
from
great
her.
payment.
Oh my God. But there was a few cans of this treble IPA, which was 10.75%. But I
Really
thought it was going
strong.
to be vile, but it was like drinking cans of wine, right? And the thing was, it was delicious, but my God, like I only drank like one at the end of, say, drinking two other beers, and I could feel myself on the couch just melting into it.
Woo!
So to answer along, I'm glad. I love that there's a definite end at a half an hour, is there, Barbara? Because you and I talk worse than you, and you're bad. So there you go. All you
No, I
asked
don't
was,
know.
what
I
are you
don't want to
drinking?
piss people off too much. I know
Yeah.
that. Yeah, there's been days when we've gone over a bit, but no, we should be okay. First of all, can I ask a really stupid question as somebody who isn't a beer wanker? What does IPA actually stand for?
India Pale Ale, right?
Oh,
Which basically means very hoppy, lots of hops. So if you think a hop house that you can buy now on draft from like Guinness and
yeah,
stuff, That's
that.
the same kind. Picture that flavor, but multiplied quite strongly. That hoppy kind of a real malty. I don't know how you could describe it, but it's nice. They've gotten IPAs are hugely popular now. Like there's tons of them. Almost to the fact I think I'm that much of a beer wanker because now I find myself leaning away from IPAs because I'm going, well, every other dick's drinking an IPA. So. Don't get me started on whiskey or I'll talk forever. So
okay, well we won't. Yeah, no, stay with your IPA, and we'll try and stay sober. I want you to tell me before we again do anything more, because people will be looking at this going, "What's behind his head?" So shift your head out of the way, and then shift your head back in, and tell us who they are.
Those are my two sons. That's Sam, who's 12. That's Leon, who's 17. Sixth class in school, fifth year in school. That's the handsome daddy in the middle. I turned 50 there in July, and they basically got a local artist to do that for me as a present. And it's my favorite thing in the world. That's why it's behind me. This is where I do all my work from. And while I should have something advertising Zoom party or whatever, absolutely not. Because when I'm looking at a screen, I can see that. And I've been looking after them since they were babies. So I'm like, my major role in the world is being a dad. So that to me is everything. So I love being able to look at it. And they're great.
Fantastic.
And the meaning behind it was just basically taking the piss out of daddy, really. But I did say to you, and I want to say to everyone else, my boys are considerably better looking than that, like genuinely. Clearly because the artist knew who I was, weirdly enough.
Right.
Which I'm celebrity with the smallest C that's ever been written. But because he knew me locally. And so I think he put a lot of effort into me going, okay, make sure that he's happy in case he talks about it somewhere.
Well, it was your birthday. It was your birthday. You're the birthday boy.
That's true. But I think he kind of ran out of pens for the lads or whatever, or paint.
Listen, tell me again, you mentioned Zoom party there, and I mentioned it in the introduction. And I know this is something that you actually started it fairly quickly into this whole, like, I think the rest of us were still thinking, sure, all this pandemic will be over now in another couple of weeks. And you were sitting down making plans for if it wasn't, and you launched Zoom party. So tell us about what it is.
I would love to say that I'm one of the, like, we won the Enterprise Ireland COVID Pivot Award for Dublin, right? As a
COVID Pivot Award.
I know. Well, obviously it was a new award. I don't think they had it last or 2 years ago. But the thing was, I'd love to pretend that, because I've had people like, in-laws and stuff say to me, go, Steve, fair play to you. You were always the type, strike with there. Not at all. This whole thing came about by me being sound, really. Sean Gleason is my business partner in this, and Sean is really he's the organizer and he's the brains or whatever. I'm just the creative side and the performance side. But I rang Sean.
And the porn side.
Did I say porn?
That's what it sounded like.
Yeah. This is not the only moneymaker.
Party.
This is not the only moneymaker I own. Although I did have a woman up the north. I was doing a big thing for them. There was a big launch of something, and she genuinely asked, "Would I consider wearing nipple tassels?" Seriously, God. That's gospel truth. Right?
And
as I said to her, if you can get, because it was on a Thursday, she was talking to me. I said, if you can get them down, post it down to me for Saturday evening, which is when it was on, I'll wear them. But obviously, I never saw them, because I would love to try and just if I could get nipple tassels to spin, I would feel I have lived long enough on this earth. I've done well.
That would outshine the COVID Pivot Award. You can spin your tassels.
I love the way you were doing it in opposite directions. That's
clever.
That's a sign of a misspent youth right there, Barbara. But there you go. But what happened was, obviously, as a comedian, I had all my diary was wiped out. I thought it was only going to be for a couple of months, but obviously we now know different. Sean, my business partner, his company is Find a Venue, which is basically a venue sourcing company for companies. Well, so imagine you're throwing a Christmas party or a summer barbecue. You basically got onto him. But he had just bought a house. He just had his first baby, himself and his wife. So I rang him just to check in on him, to see how he was doing. Like, how you doing? Your business is gone, blah, blah, blah. We got chatting, and we said, look, why don't we try and do something? You come up with something, and I'll try and sell it, and da-da-da-da. And that's where it came from. So it wasn't any great plan. Thank God, ended up building a better mousetrap, really. And then, so last year, in about 7 months, we did over 250 events in like over 50 or 60 countries worldwide. Like, even as I was saying to you earlier, I was speaking to the European Parliament, or a big patch of the European Parliament this morning, just entertaining them. So we basically were just fun on Zoom. That's it. So, and I don't want to bore anybody by making this a big plug of the company, but it did. Thank God it took off. So, as even
And
Nuala and I, my wife, are saying, we'd be a very different family.
yeah,
Like last year was the most successful year I've ever had, which was
right.
insane. When I know that so many people are just
Sure.
decimated, So,
And
so
do you do, I mean, I know you do, you host parties like for companies and that kind of stuff, but when you're entertaining, like, are you doing your normal kind of comedy set?
no, no, it doesn't work.
No.
Because right in the beginning, the Laughter Lounge, because obviously I'm a resident host in the Laughter Lounge for years, and we tried to do comedy on, like, we did one from the venue live, myself,
Yeah.
Enya Martin, Eric Lawler from Fair City, and Danny O'Brien, who's great. And the whole audience was my dog Wolfie, my sheepdog Wolfie, one of my son's old big teddy bears in another chair, and then the owner of the Laughter Lounge in a full hazmat suit. And that was the whole audience. And we just did stand up in an empty venue. And it basically sounded like it was a stand up in an empty venue. We did it live it was done over Zoom and blah, blah, blah. But it just didn't work because,
Yeah.
stand up, the joy of stand up is being in the room, feeling the atmosphere,
The energy.
having everyone laugh around you, and then you explode with laughter too, So
Yeah.
that didn't
Yeah.
work. So no,
Yeah.
basically, but look, not to, as I said, not to bleed on about the company. There's more exciting things to talk about. But how it works is it's all interactive. So getting people involved, like looking without it's squeaky clean. Everything I do is squeaky clean, which I tell you, Barbara, if you've never seen my stand up, and please God you will. But
I will.
I'm not filthy, but I'm far from clean. Like I'm a harsh enough comic. I'm quite filthy. Do you know what I am? I'm filthy. Whereas I've been working clean now for what, 8-9 months and loving, and I would have punched you in the face and sworn if you told me I'd be able to work clean. So you can do it. So
Interesting. Yeah. That's very well. Look at congratulations with all of that, and well done, because you definitely spotted an opportunity and went after it. So that's brilliant. Now, first business is books. Are you a reader? I don't know if you're a reader or not. Anyway,
I've been a reader for years, but I'm a huge audiobook guy because I love to
Right.
cook. So I constantly have an audiobook on the go at all times. So
okay,
obviously throughout all this, because for years of driving, obviously when I'm starting off comedy, I'd be driving up and down the length and breadth of the country at all hours. So basically audiobooks and podcasts were my thing. Because radio, as much as I love being on radio's got so many ad breaks and so many, newscasts and all this. If you're doing any sort of distance, I couldn't stick with it. So for me, I love a good audiobook. I have some great audiobook recommendations if people want.
Fire ahead. Let's hear them. Tell us about them.
On a reality one, right? The 10th anniversary of The Heroin Diaries by Nikki Sixx. Now, Nikki Sixx was the bass player with Motley Crue. You know, the rock band Smoke on the Boys Room and everything else?
Do.
Well, Nikki Sixx, back in 1987 on Christmas Day, woke up under a Christmas tree alone in his big, huge mansion with a syringe in his arm and massively paranoid, and then went into his closet with his shotgun and blah, 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 not to hurt himself because he thought people were coming. And then security came, the security who live in the estate kind of thing or wherever. And he basically had this weird epiphany kind of moment. He went, I'm going to start keeping a diary, right? So for the next year, he wrote a diary in his diary every day, while in the massive heights of heroin addiction, but also when Motley Crue toured the world with Girls, Girls, Girls Tour, right? And so he wrote this unbelievable diary, right? And then ended up publishing it. Now he's a massive Narcotics Anonymous speaker and all that. Now he's changed his whole life around. But the 10th anniversary edition is fantastic because one, he's reading it, but all the people who are in the book have been given right to reply, and he recorded them as well. Exactly. So you have like Vince Neil, who was the lead guitar, Tommy Lee, as we all know Tommy Lee, right?
Yeah.
And but Vince Neil talking about it, and there was a girl who was known as Vanity, and anyone remember from the 80s, she was this beautiful black girl, stunning. She used to date Prince. I swear to God, if I showed you a photograph, you'd know her. But she is now a born again Christian, and she is like going, he's hellbound, like she still hates him. So it's a real warts and all kind of an audio.
What's that called again?
It's The Heroin Diaries by Nikki Sixx. Right, NIKKISIXX, and it's the 10th anniversary edition. Oh my God, it's brilliant. At the moment, I'm a huge Stephen King fan. Always have been. First Stephen King book I ever read was The Dead Zone when I was 15, and I remember it was the first book I ever wanted to go. I used to read in bed, and I remember at 15 years of age looking forward to bedtime so that I could get back into reading that book.
Yeah,
But
I was that girl.
He did a series of books called The Dark Tower, and he wrote the first one in 1970, which is the year I was born. And he all throughout my life, a new one would come out. So I first read The Gunslinger, which was the first one, which is quite a hard read, but after that it's brilliant. But I first read The Gunslinger when I was about 22. I found it in chapters in city centre. And then I was able to find the next two, but then I had to wait for each one. And then there'd be like 5, 6, 7 years between them. Then I remember I was working in London, and I heard on the radio that Stephen King had been run over by a car and was in intensive care, and it looked like he was going to die. My first thought, I remember the second I heard it he's never going to finish The Dark Tower. And then thank God he pulled through. And I remember the very last book of The Dark Tower, which is called The Dark Tower, it's the seventh, I think, was released in 2006. And Leon, my eldest, was nearly 3 at the time. So for the last 100 pages of this book, because I knew this was the end. Because, with kids at that age, there could always be a distraction or something. So basically, Nuala, my wife, went, "You're heading to the pub," and she sent me to the pub to read the last 100 pages of a series of books I'd been reading for like 30 years. And I remember
amazing.
Got to the end of it, and it was perfect. To me, it was just perfect, and it was that fabulous moment. So if you really want countless hours, and I mean countless hours of reading or listening, like some of the audiobooks are like, I know The Stand by Stephen King is like 47 hours long or something.
Wow.
So value for money is amazing on that. But it's all about the reader as well. If you're not into audiobooks, you haven't tried it, have a listen. There's always going to be a sample. If you have a slight doubt about the audiobook reader in that sample, don't get it.
Don't get it.
I love the Lee Child books. I'm terrible. I'd love to say I read these, Pablo Neruda or Chekhov or stuff. Yeah. No, I love a great story, right?
It's a great story, yeah.
But Lee Child books, they're about Reacher, the Jack Reacher books. I've always enjoyed them. But the guy who does the audiobooks for those sounds to me exactly like Seymour Skinner from The Simpsons. And I cannot abide. So I can't listen to them. And it kills me. Because I've read so many, I've read everything of Stephen King, and I've pretty much listened to the audiobook of everything as well. Because it's like a new way of enjoying the book,
Yeah.
But so I would certainly recommend those. They're brilliant. Podcasting wise, I have a great podcast for you if you haven't listened to this one.
Go with your podcast,
No Such Thing as a Fish. Are you familiar with them?
No, I'm not great now on podcasts.
Barbara, you would love this. They're about half an hour long. It's Andrew Hunter Murray, Anna Miller. Basically, they're the QI researchers. And they came up with this podcast. So what they do is each one of them, each week, picks one fact. And then they tell the others about the facts. And then they all research this fact. And then they come back with it. And the facts are, I am not one of these people, as you've just heard my literary choice. I'm not someone who's looking to be educated all the time. But my God, it's fascinating.
That's refreshing.
Isn't it, though? But there was
refreshing.
There was one, I only listened to one yesterday, and there's 7 years of these. So there's about 350 of these. So just find them on any of the. Podbean is the thing that I use. It's like a free download for your phone, and then it's called Podbean, Podbean. It's just an app, and then it's filled with every podcast in the world, and you can follow it. It stores them for you. It's like keeping all your podcasts in one place, and it's free.
Excellent.
So it's free, right?
I'm going to jump in there. I said I wasn't into podcasts, but actually I'm going to suggest one because I contributed to it, and I suppose I should. There's a podcast. It's done from the UK, and it's called the Better Known Podcast. And it basically by a guy called Ivan Wise, and it's basically where he invites a guest on to talk about 6 things that they feel that they love and that they feel should be better known. That's the only criteria. It can be a book, it can be a film, it can be a place, it can be anything you like. Now, a lot of the guests that he have on are quite intellectual. So I brought the tone right down. Somebody suggested that he contact me, and I did one, but it was great fun. But that's
what did you recommend?
I recommended, now let me think, 'cause I haven't prepared this off the top of my head. I recommended my favorite place in Ireland, which is a little place called Ahakista in West Cork, which I actually then was sorry I did because I don't really want everybody to know about it. I'm quite happy that a lot of people have never
Pretty
heard of
much
it.
all of West Cork is pretty awesome. So yeah,
All of
you're
West
staying.
Cork is, this is on the Sheep's Head Peninsula, which a lot of people don't tend to go down the Sheep's Head. I
I
recommended a
could make
place
a
in the
rude
north.
joke right there. I
Sorry?
could make a rude joke right there. They'd rather go in the
Good.
anyway, sorry, go on.
I mentioned my favorite place in the Canary Islands, which is in the north of Tenerife. I mentioned weird things like Donegal Airport, flying to Donegal really from Dublin, which I think everybody should do. It is amazing. And it's like, it's really cheap. I mean, it's something we actually might be able to do again during the summer. But to take a flight to Donegal is, first of all, the approach is amazing. It's like flying used to be. It's very relaxed, very chilled. It is just
I
brilliant.
married I married a Donegal woman because obviously you get a grant, right? But the thing is, but I've never flown in. You do, seriously, yeah, £2 from the government. They go, if you can make a non-ginger child or one with more than one eyebrow, you get a grant for that. Have you ever flown to the Aran Islands?
Yes. Oh
Is
my
that,
God, I have.
look, first of all, they weigh you. That's an insult. Second, you get to the airport because you're too fat to sit in the left side of the plane, is the thing I heard, right? When they said they're weighing. But I was sitting directly behind the pilot.
Yeah, he's like in the cabin with you.
Yeah, but there's just the pilot. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like there's anyone else. And I'm going, he could have a heart attack. I could choke him or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'm going, could I land this plane? Maybe, could I obviously crash land, but could I do it if I have to? Like, it's a bizarre experience. So when you flew to Donegal, is it the same sort of plane?
No, it's a bigger plane. It's a bigger plane. It's propellers, but it's a much bigger plane. And there's a cockpit and there's a cabin crew. But Air Aran to the Aran Islands is just fantastic. And the first time I ever flew, now they have, when they weigh you, they have this very subtle kind of little plate on the floor that you stand on, and your weight obviously comes up with the person who's checking you in on their computer, but you're not aware of it, and that's all fine. But when I went there first, it was one of those big, do you remember like you'd see them in movies with the huge big face that you stood on and you watched? That was how Magoo here was made the first time. And the last time we went, we had this little dog who I still miss. I miss a dog. But anyway, we had this little dog called Dylan, a little Cavalier King Charles. And the last time it was the middle of the recession and we had no money. And we were on this really cheap holiday in Connemara with the kids when they were small. And I remember saying to Paul, and I'm no use on a boat. Like I'll puke my guts up the whole way. And it's quite a long boat trip. Like it's an hour to the Aran Islands. So I said, look, I'd really love to go again. I'd love us to fly. So we went in to check how much it would be for the four of us. And because the flight, I mean, it only takes 11 people or something on this plane. So because there was four of us, we got a group discount. So it made us really, and then I was thinking, oh God, we've the dog. And I just said to your woman, I don't suppose you could take a dog. And she goes, if the dog can fit on your knee, yeah, we take the dog. So I was like, great. But when we went to be weighed, when we went to be checked in, she said, who's going to have the dog on their knee? And of course, we nominated one of the kids, so she had to be weighed with the dog as well for the places.
It's a bit scary that a small dog's weight could crash a bloody plane into the sea. By the way.
Well, there you go. But I mean, you're only flying. It feels like you're flying about 10 feet above the sea. Like it's only
absolutely one of the maddest things I saw coming back. We flying back was someone flew back with a punctured tire. Because obviously, the wheel with the puncture on it, because obviously they had to go to the mainland to get the tire repaired.
Get it fixed.
So they basically stuck that in the hold. Like, it's fab. It's an amazing.
Everybody should do it.
Yeah.
Everybody should do it. Unless you're afraid of flying.
Oh, well, that's another thing. I was never afraid of flying. As I've gotten older, my fear of flying has grown.
Oh,
because I think maybe it's like rolling the dice over and over again, or maybe there's an arrogance when you're young. Like I was talking to the European Parliament today, and what they wanted me to do something as an icebreaker, something just to try and give them just for 20, 25 minutes, Steve, try and keep people doing stuff. So I said, let's find out.
Come here. Hold on. Were you actually talking to the MEPs in the European Parliament?
Well, it was the Green Party's MEPs from all over thingy.
All over Europe.
Well, yeah, all over. There was Germans and French and Austrian and Italian and whatever. And there was interpreters, which is hilarious. Because years ago, I got to do a comedy gig once where I had, it was for, there was people who were deaf in the audience and there was people in wheelchairs and everything else. But I had a sign language interpreter on the stage with me. all the time I was performing. And very quickly, Mr. Asshole here realized that she had to sign everything I ever did. Right? And the most beautiful moment, right, I had was I said, like, I apologize for the language, which, it's what I used to get.
Yeah.
I still do. But I went just randomly in the middle of a sentence. I just went, and the monkey started wanking. Right? And this is just to see what she'd do. And this, I felt what a legend of a woman.
Please tell me she did it.
This is exactly what she did. I'll have to step back. She just went like this.
Yeah.
Hang on, where am I? She just went like this. She just went. She did that, right? That was it. This. And then she turned to me and went, but the best part, she turned to me and went, and I went, you legend. It was so good. Just the way she did it, I was like, fuck you. I was like, genius woman. But
you should bring a sign interpreter on the stage with you all the time when we get back to normal.
It would be something I'd be tempted to do. Also, you could just get one of your mates to pretend, because unless there's someone deaf or who reads sign in the audience, so they could get away with anything,
Yeah.
I do know this. Can I teach your viewers one thing in sign language?
Yes, please.
This is having a poop. It's perfect, isn't it? That's what it is. I'm guessing
Brilliant.
the poop.
Brilliant. A good healthy food too.
Look how quickly I lowered the tone. I guarantee you no one has talked.
That's why you're here. That's exactly why you're here. But listen, on that, one of the things that I'm kind of surprised at, considering that we are in this shit show at the moment, and I know a lot of people are finding it difficult, is that a lot of mainstream media, and particularly RTE, I can't believe that nobody has come up with some way of taking the piss out of this situation that we're in. That somebody isn't doing kind of some comedy around our handling of the pandemic, of this mad way that we're living, of our inept kind of leaders, coming up with ridiculous sound bites.
Did you see it? Jason Byrne has only just started what I think he's calling lockdown wankerism. And I only noticed a couple of things just in the last couple of days. And one of them he did was people when a jogger comes near them and they're not getting out of the way, and he just has mad horror music playing or whatever. And it's about our attitudes to the whole idea. But I think, the way one of those traditional rules of comedy is tragedy plus time equals comedy. So, like, you can do jokes about World War II, but you certainly can't do jokes about something 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I think when we have gotten through COVID, I think then you're going to see a wealth of amazing comedy. And there'll be, do you know what I find is amazing is, like, did you notice that suddenly Netflix, there's a million movies about pandemics and stuff. How have they managed to drag these out of the woodwork? Do you know?
One of the best books that I read this year was Emma Donoghue's book, The Pull of the Stars. Emma Donoghue's the Irish writer. She lives in Canada. She wrote Room, that was turned into the movie by Lenny Abramson. But she wrote a novel which was published in February or March. So in other words, she would have written it, a good year before that. And it's set in Dublin in 1918 in the midst of the Spanish flu. In the rotunda, in this makeshift maternity ward that they had to create in order to look after women who were giving birth but who had the Spanish flu. So, like, you do wonder, like, how did she, is there something in the ether that people pick up? And
my first thought is, when you told me that, could she not write a story about more than one room? It's like her first book was Room, her second book is this ward. Just give me two wards.
But a lot of it, and it's all set over literally one weekend, but it's the most beautifully written, beautiful story, very female-centric story. Like, there's a couple of minor male characters, but it's a gorgeous book. But again, it's that thing of just, the right thing at the right time, and it's got all these echoes that are kind of relevant to us now. But I do think that, but I do think that Irish people are really, I think we're good at taking the piss out of situations.
Absolutely.
I think it's how we release a lot of tension and stress is by saying this is shit and we can laugh about it. So I still wish that, somebody like Jason Byrne, I think was who you mentioned, and comedians doing stuff online is great. But I would love to see, like, I've stopped watching the Late Late Show because I can't
Oh,
take the
oh,
fact that
but
it's now morphed into some kind of like, it's this messaging, and it's really done in a very unsubtle way, straight over, banging you over the head with,
do you know
and
what?
you
Do you know
really
what it's
want to
become?
be entertained.
Do you know what it's become? It's become the fourth or fifth week of the X Factor, where whoever's gotten into the next final is dragging out, disabled relatives or dying grandparents or something. It's all about let's be. Oh, isn't this heartwarming? No, actually, it's not. It's not. I'm sorry, but it's just not. There's enough friggin' misery outside
Yes.
my front door. I
Yeah.
don't need Ryan Tuberty sitting
Yeah.
there having his ears get warm at the joy that this child is suddenly, oh, it's heartwarming. Heartwarming is a word that I think outside a coronary artery surgeon's office should not be mentioned, because my heart is fine, by the way. I like the way it is. I don't need somebody
My
else's
heart
misery.
warmed.
And I think that's kind of what it is. Is it a human nature thing? At least, oh well, I may be, this way, but that person's only got one leg, so I'm slightly better off. And then they've got no legs. Damn it, they beat me with one leg or something. I don't know. It's like, sorry, but yeah, I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 100%.
You're absolutely right. You're
Brighten up the
absolutely
nation.
right. I just think that we are craving entertainment that's taken the piss out of this. I think it'll give everybody a lift. And I think the constant messaging, as you say, and the constant heartwarming and the constant tragedy, we don't need at the moment. We
No,
absolutely don't need.
as I
And I
said,
don't know how they get it so wrong, in my
here.
view.
While I think of it totally changing the subject, but I think that's kind of what's great about what this is. I love this, by the way.
Absolutely.
I have started doing teaching my kids stuff because, as I said, mine are 12 and 17, right? But I've started doing the teaching my kids stuff that they're not going to learn in school anyway, and that it's a perfect opportunity for me to teach them. For example, there's been cooking going on, but not like banana bread, but like, here's how you cook a steak. My eldest, Leon, came downstairs. He said, I want to cook dinner. This last Saturday night, he said he's going to cook dinner. And he made, now this is not me being all his geese or swans, even though I do adore my boys, right? But he pan-fried salmon in garlic and something, right? And then he had a pea puree. Now, I'm a great cook. I love to cook. I've been cooking for years. And he made this amazing meal, right? And because he's bored now, and he's going, I'm going to give this a go. So you got to kind of push them into it. Another thing, I'm teaching both how to change the tire in a car, how to check the oil on the car. Little kind of simple
Life
stuff
skills.
Life skills, but life skills you'd never have the time or be arsed to teach them otherwise. And I think that's.
I'm ancient. I don't know how to make pea puree. And I was only saying to my husband the other day, one of the things that I took up just before the pandemic, but really kind of got into it during all of this, is cycling. And but like I got a puncture a couple of weeks ago. We were out somewhere and my bike got a puncture. And I was just saying, why isn't there an AA for bikes? That like when you get a puncture, you can ring up and the AA will come out and they will change your tire. Because I've been driving for like 40 years and I still don't know what to do.
Can I say, right?
With my car.
I am not Mr. Manly Man, despite the fact that I jump in the sea in the mornings in me tidy whities.
And you wear shorts all year round.
It's 365, and I am that guy. And down the back garden, I have free weights, as in metal barbells, and a punch bag in my back. It's like a prison yard down the very back of my back garden, right? But I am not in any way Manly Man, right?
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not with something like. I would be embarrassed if I had an AA man come and change the tire on my bicycle. To be honest, I would be embarrassed if I was out on my bicycle. I have to say, once I got old enough to drive a car, I was very happy. Now, here's a question for you, Madame Scully. What sort of cyclist are you? Are you one of those? No, about, I don't mean going up and down mountains. I mean about your attitude. Are you, I will go on any footpath I want. I want to stir up the cyclist people.
I obey all the rules of the road. And as I'm always saying to my husband, who accompanies me, now he's pretty good as well, but that's because he's English, and so he follows rules and he, plays
kind of in the DNA, yeah.
Yeah, whereas I would be a natural anarchist. But when I'm on my bike, partly because I'm terrified, but also because I'm obviously also a driver, if we come up to a junction and the lights are red, we stop, even though we might be able to kind of, just kind of dip around the corner. So no, I'm very good, but it's because I'm still kind of slightly nervous. And I still know I'm very aware of my own shortcomings, but it has been something that has totally saved my sanity in the last, certainly in the last year. The feeling of freedom, even though we're not really free at the minute, but you have a feeling of freedom when you're on the bike because you can. Whereas I probably wouldn't walk 10K every day, but I'd certainly cycle more than that most days, and that
Well,
makes me feel. That
well,
makes me feel that I'm kind of like I'm
but wasn't
free.
remember the Great Escape movie? Somebody managed to get to freedom by cycling with some onions over his neck. One of
Well,
the
I may
stars.
try that. I
But
may try that.
here's a question, and please take it in the spirit in which it is
Oh,
being asked.
Jesus.
How's your arse? Because I remember on the Aran Islands, back to it, renting a bike. My poor delicate hiney, it was like I had bruises in places. Like I didn't even know those places existed because I mean proper fucking.
Were
So
you on the Aran Islands with me? Because when we went to the Aran Islands the last time, we hired bikes as well, and and that was years ago. Like again, the kids were small, and I can remember after even about 10 minutes,
I
I
know.
said to "Oh, this is like riding a fucking razor blade. Like literally, it was cutting the bum off me."
So
So,
how is the
but
new?
no,
How's
my
the new
arse
travel?
now. Let me tell you, my bike, who's called Sheila, came all the way from Australia with my daughter, who came home for
Excellent name
Christmas
for a bike.
12 months ago and brought it with her as a present for me. And it has what is known as an Australian wide ass saddle. And it is life changing. Life
Brilliant,
changing. Big
brilliant.
fat saddle, and I'm away. Listen, we're after going miles over, 10 minutes
Oh, I'm
over.
so sorry. Sorry, I do. Oh my
No,
God, we have.
listen, you were brilliant. I feel better, and I'm sure everybody else does as
I'm
well.
delighted.
And it's lovely to see you because I haven't seen you
Yeah, you
physically
too.
for
Exactly. Yeah.
ages. So, listen, continued success with Zoom Party,
Thanks
and
a
well done
million.
again. And thank you so much for being my guest.
Loved it.
I'm going to get those. I think I have them right, but I'll run those book suggestions by you again, and I'll put them up on my website tomorrow as well, and the podcast suggestions. Steve Cummins, thank you so much. Stay well,
Barbara,
stay
you're a
safe.
star. Thanks a million. God
Bye.
bless.
And
Bye.
thank you all for
Bye.
tuning in. We'll be back here again next Wednesday, when I hope you'll join us again. But for the moment, stay safe, wash your hands, keep the distance, and then turn the radio off. See you next week. Bye bye.